guys, welcome back to another episode of Out of the Box. I'm G.
And I'm May.
And today we are going to be talking all about adoption trauma, but specifically, when does it start? How does it trickle into your daily life as adoptees? And how can you live with it? Let's just say. So let's kind of jump right in. When does adoption trauma start? When the baby separates from the mother, whether it is an infant, a newborn, or if you're a toddler or even older, that main experience of just being torn away and separated from your mother is a traumatic experience in general. So it really doesn't help, especially for adoptees who were adopted earlier in their life, whether you're a baby, an infant, or even a toddler age, which May and I were. We were 2.5 to 3 years old when we were adopted. And I truly think that the separation from our foster mom, we had two very traumatic experiences. One, being left by our birth mother, but then two, also being torn away from our foster mother, which we kind of grew to know and love for 2 to 3 years. So we kind of went through two very traumatic experiences, but I just kind of want to dive in with a quote, see what you think. Do you resonate with it? If you don't resonate with it, what do you think about it? So this quote is coming from a woman named Gia. She's a fellow adoptee. That's all I was given when I was reading it, but this is what she says. Reflecting back, it's like adoption trauma is one big secret that was kept from me. For me, adoption trauma was never having a sense of comfort in my own body and having no control over my story. It was never having anyone there to validate my feelings. It was a choking sensation in my throat that was always there. So what do you think about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I definitely agree where she mentions how it could be a secret, or to her it felt like a secret, or like how it was kind of choking her essentially because one, some adopted kids don't feel like they can speak about their trauma or are comfortable with it.
Yeah.
They don't want to hurt their adoptive parents' feelings. They may not have friends that feel the same way. So essentially as an adoptee, you're kind of all by yourself, right? And it's really hard to decipher all these emotions and feelings that come with adoption because it's a lot more than just living with another family.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get more into it and exactly how it can affect you at such a young age.
Yeah. I think this is a great quote. I think Gia really did captivate what it truly means to not really know, but also to know the fact that the trauma in general trickles into your life overall on all aspects because it was so traumatic. So we kind of touch bases on when the adoption trauma kind of happens. But now let's kind of go more in deep on how it actually affects your brain, because when you are growing up, and usually right from when you're born to about 5 years old, your brain is growing at a rapid pace. And someone told me once that, Someone once told me, excuse me, that was my dyslexia, said that to think of the brain as from the bottom up. Like your brain when you are born is in the most formative years as it will ever be. So anything from that 1 to 2 to 2 to 5 range, you're learning everything you see. You are listening to it, you're hearing it, you're trying out new foods, you're learning a language. And a lot of the time people don't know is that you are starting your bond with your mother in utero. Yeah. So even before your brain is formed, you're being connected and bonded with your mother via her voice, her speech, her language, the environment she's in, what she's eating. You're eating that too, or digesting it at least. And just the sounds and environment that she's in, you are also in. So if you are torn away from that right from birth, that's all you ever knew.
Yeah.
And so that is where the trauma is coming in too, because if you were not fortunate enough, like May and I were, to stay with your mother for a little longer at least, we didn't get to bond with her outside of the womb.
Yes.
Or at least that from our recollection.
Yeah.
We never really got that bond because we were found on the street like many other children. And like you said in the last podcast, we were just dispersed. We didn't have any mail or
paper
trail. Like there was nothing connecting us to somebody.
Yeah.
And that is also really hard to kind of navigate too in life.
Well, I think that's also why maternity leave is a thing. When you're about to give birth or whatever, we have implemented in our country and world where mothers will take however long or a specific amount of time to just be with their kid. And that's purely for bonding because as a kid, as a baby, you can't do anything by yourself. You can't nurture yourself. You can't feed yourself. You can't do anything. So essentially you rely heavily on your mother or your parents. And so I think that's why the maternity leave is a thing. no child should be separated from their biological mother or mother at such a young age for these exact reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
And adoption does the exact opposite. You're literally stripped away from what you know. And like you said, we can't rely on past traumas to remember how we were prior to traumatic experience, and that traumatic experience being adoption. Because we were little, we were babies, we didn't have another life prior, so all we know is trauma from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to explain it from our point of view.
And as an adult adoptee, I can see why adoption can be traumatizing.
Yeah.
But when you're that young or that little, I don't think I ever comprehended how traumatizing it was. Because
or how it would affect you later.
Yeah, just because, I don't know, I was just doing what I was told. But I also don't have recollection. I don't have memories. I don't have emotions or feelings to my life prior to being adopted at 2.5, 3. Y'all, like, my memories genuinely start when I'm like 5 or 6.
And I wonder if that's because it stems from your traumatic experience. Like, it's hard to pinpoint why you don't know memories earlier on, because we did have a life. We did have family in China. We did have people that cared for us. And from like even videos that we are shown, we were genuinely like happy kids.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I know I get some triggers, but then also like memories of our past. And when I ever try to come talk to you about it, you just don't know. So I wonder if it's like your brain trying to help you or keep you safe from those different memories, maybe because it was so traumatic.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I knew, and I know you know.
Yeah.
And we've had many conversations about it, but yeah, I wish I fully knew, because I think I'm old enough to be aware of, one, my emotions now, and 2, I would like to know what we did prior to getting here in the States.
Yeah.
But that's what's weird. You know everything I don't.
I don't know everything, but I get like glimpses. I know more.
Yeah, I don't get any of that.
Yeah. So weird. So you can still be twins, but still like clearly in both of us, you're missing your first 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm missing parts of it. Yep. Which is just crazy. And I'm wondering also for other fellow adoptees out there, do you remember your life prior, depending on how old you were when you were adopted? We have friends who were adopted right from birth versus our friend Anna, who was adopted when she was 7. So like 7 and a newborn will have very different views on this, but also their trauma is similar. It starts with the birth mom and being torn away.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy.
And that's why a lot of adopted people or adoptees in general have anxiety, have not social anxiety. They do have anxiety, and they also suffer from abandonment issues because we all were abandoned at some point in our pivotal, when we were young.
Yeah, that's where I was also going to go about, like, there's a theory called the attachment theory and how separation affects a child. And you just touched base on it, where it was, we as adoptees, it is harder for us to trust people in general, because we always go back to, well, what if, or can this happen again? And usually it's a lot worse when you're younger, because you don't know how to navigate those feelings. You aren't taught how to kind of help your triggers in those certain circumstances. But now, I mean, we can trust. We have learned to trust. We have learned ways to trust people and put people in different categories of trust. But there is another quote from this adoptee named Nicole that I would like to also share with you to get your take on it, because this is specifically about separation effects and how it kind of mixes within your entire life and aspects of your life.
Okay.
So Nicole says, quote, "Something that is often at play for adoptees are these people-pleasing behaviors or parts that we are trying to constantly mold ourselves to the space we are in, the people who are around us. We think this reduces the chances that we will be abandoned. Often adoptees as young children stopped ourselves from crying or being too noisy. The first time we were reprimanded by our adoptive parents, though, we learned to shut down and never show our emotions because we didn't want to be in trouble. We didn't want to risk being taken away or pushed away. You can tell how that leads to not healthy relational dynamics when we are older."
I definitely agree with that. I think the people-pleasing one, but also just trying to fit in.
Yeah.
The people-pleasing one, I've always been a people pleaser. You know, I always try to cater to those around me. And I guess it's kind of stems from that, what she just said, where we don't want to potentially be abandoned. We don't want to have that feeling again. And even though you were so little, or I was little, you still always feel it. You always still know it could be a possibility because that's what happened before. So who says it can't happen again? But when you grow older, you realize that's not actually what's going to happen. But it feels like it's going to happen, especially when you're younger and going through that adolescent phase. You're going in and out of friends. Who knows about your relationship with your adoptive parents? Like, are you
That's so true.
bumping into each other and fighting a lot? Or whatever it is, but the people pleasing for sure I relate to.
Yeah.
And then the one where it's like just trying to fit in, because as an adoptee, you always know you're different somehow. You know that you're not biologically related to your family members. You know you won't have genetic mother to look up to and how you're going to be seen or what you're going to look like. You don't know your family tree. You don't know anything medical about yourself. If you have a closed adoption like G and I, and it was in the early 2000s where no one really had paper trails, you were just displaced and given up for adoption.
Yeah.
So you always know you're different. And if you're in an interracial adoption, you do not look anything like your parents, and that's a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
So I think because we already know that we are different, we have to fit in or try to fit in as best as possible to not have that abandonment feeling.
Yeah.
And I definitely went through that and still go through that sometimes.
Yeah. I catch myself to this day being like a people pleaser in cases where I don't necessarily need to, just because there's that subconscious thought that I need validation or I need these people to like me for some reason. I don't know why, because I couldn't get two shits if someone doesn't like me or not. But when I'm in that moment and I'm talking to somebody, I do catch myself being like, wait, should I have said that or not? Kept that to myself? Should I have probably done something else? And that's very rare, but it does happen sometimes. I also have caught myself earlier on where I saw some kids maybe crying about some things, and I never cried in public, or at least I never liked crying in public.
I never liked it either.
Because I thought, one, people were going to think my adoptive parents did something wrong and or stole me because I look different. And so I thought somebody was going to come take me back home. I didn't want to, like I said, the thought of being scared of getting taken back home. It also does not help when your adoptive siblings tell you if you misbehave, you're going to get shipped back home.
I mean, at the time, though, in her defense, she didn't fully mean it, but she also didn't understand how that could affect an adoptee.
Yeah.
And we took it sometimes seriously, especially when we were younger and we didn't understand the actual joke.
Yeah.
But obviously that never happened. That was never going to happen.
But it did, like, what the first time she said it, it did scare us.
Yeah.
It did scare us because I know me and you talked about it and we're like, you think she's like lying? We knew she was lying now, but like back then when we were like 8, 10.
And see, and I think that's also why I don't enjoy change, because it means I have to adapt yet again.
Yeah.
And people please yet again, because if we're adapting, I need to change something or somehow to continue living.
It's more the fear of not fitting in.
Yes.
And I don't want to say it's worse than others and those who are not adopted, but it's a different fear, I would say, a category of fear, because it's like life or death situations sometimes that I felt like I had to act like this because I thought I was going to die if I wasn't.
Oh, see, I know I felt that too, but I think mine came into as anxiety, and that's why I also have social anxiety. Like, I always need to make sure I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Instead of sticking out like a sore thumb, because we've always been different. We've always been.
That's all we know.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing we've known, but it's also like we were adopted into a very predominantly white families. Before May and I came, there wasn't really diversity at all. There was no minorities. There wasn't really anything diverse about our adoptive parents' families. And so growing up, like May said, in predominantly white families, you were always not the sore thumb, but black sheep, but
outsider.
Yeah, outcast. And to this day, sometimes I still feel like I'm still on the outside of the certain family members.
Oh, same.
So like, it's always going to be there with you.
Which sucks.
Yeah. But as adoptees, and when you grow, you will learn how to cope with that.
And you'll never forget that you're different, especially if you're an interracial adoptee. You take one look at your family members and you're like, I'm not like anything like you guys.
Yeah.
And so you're just always surrounded by you're different. Deal with it.
Yeah. Let's go into like now understanding the 4 major categories of adoption trauma. So the first one is very simple. It is the loss of identity. This happens, like we've said multiple times already. This occurs when you lose your story as an adoptee. The child, the infant, the toddler, whatever age you are when you're separated from your birth family, no matter if it's your mother or your grandparents or your brother or anybody, that diverse moment when you are broken up and taken away is when you lose your identity, because you don't know, like May said, your parents, your birth parents. You don't know your extended family. You don't know your bloodline. You don't know your medical history. Everything about you that you knew up to that point is being erased.
Yeah. Or just taken from you like that.
Yeah. So that is the first one. And I feel like me and you have definitely touched on this loss of identity so many times when it came to in-school projects where you got to do your family trait.
I hate those projects.
Yeah.
And we would always have issues too sometimes with our teachers because we would always be like, I don't know my life past 2 or like from beginning of life to 2. Like, I don't know. It's a big ass question mark.
Yeah.
And there's no way for me to get those answers for you, especially for this stupid project.
Yeah.
But like, we would get in trouble because we didn't know our history. And I was like, that's not my fault.
Yeah. I also was told by a teacher to make it up.
No.
And I just looked at her and I was like, make up what? My life? Because don't ever tell an adoptee, just make it up. Because we have already made up various scenarios.
Oh, I've made up so many different scenarios in my head just to try to help soothe some of those emotions.
Yeah.
So being told also in high school from a teacher.
Yes, this was high school.
To make it up, you're just like, you're full of shit. Shut up.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know anything. You don't know how I feel about this. I don't even want to do this. I know you verbally mentioned and told her, like, I can't do this. I'm not willing to do this. I told her of the project, not to get rid of the project completely, but just the parts that you didn't have the info for. And all she did was yell at you and tell you it was your fault. That's not helpful either. So if you're a teacher and you're like that, maybe go educate yourself on adoption.
That was just a horrible experience in general. And I have never experienced that with any other teacher of mine, just her. And I don't know why, but
she was an ass.
We'll just leave it at that. The next major category is loss of innate trust. So this comes in with our abandonment issues. This is the stem of why we have them. So when you are torn apart from your birth family, you literally just got ripped out everything you have known.
Yeah.
So you do not trust anybody after that until you learn how to trust. And I feel like that's very hard if you're not, I guess, helped, or if there's not any tactics to help, like therapy or support groups or just fellow other adoptees to talk to. It really does feel like it's you against the world.
Yeah.
So like these abandonment issues, anybody can have them no matter at what age you were adopted. So whenever that separation occurred, again, like I said in the beginning, very much occurs right when that experience happens.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the third common category,
which is loss of healthy stress response system, which that makes sense. As when you're little, you don't get to properly go through the emotions and handling stress.
Yeah.
Like when you're little, you don't get to do that. It's just what they say happens and you just go where they take you. You don't have a say. You don't get to choose who your parents are. You don't really get anything. So that's why it can be very stressful and you don't have those tips or things that help you navigate or regulate that.
That does not help when you are then transferred with these random people after 2 weeks to a whole new country.
Like, just imagine getting comfortable with something and then all of a sudden it's taken from you and you have to restart again.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine how stressful that is. But now imagine if you were a baby, 1 or 2, 3 even, and you're just trying to understand your own language and people around you, and you're just taken to a whole new country. Different people, different language, different food. Everything is different. The environment's very different. So you don't really get to have positive stress tips or help.
Yeah.
That's where we create, or adoptees create, the toxic stress relievers.
Just toxic shit.
Yeah, like we do not handle stress very well. I go straight into panic mode.
Yeah.
Which is horrible. But now I see where I get it and why I have it.
Yeah.
It's not fun though. I'll tell you that.
Listen, I don't recommend it. But I bet if you're watching this and you're an adoptee, you probably resonate with some of the things we're saying.
Absolutely.
The last common a trauma category is disenfranchised grief.
I have no idea what this is.
So I heard of this, but I didn't hear it in this way. But let's kind of put it more into simpler terms, grief. Adoptees are not really told how to grieve their loss or the trauma that they experienced, whether you are young or older. If you're older, maybe you might get more guidance from the organization, but it's not great. It doesn't help you as much. But from a child's perspective, like May and I, when we were 2.5, 3 years old, we were never told what happened. At least at 3, we weren't when we were growing up and getting older and understanding a lot more, that's when our adoptive parents kind of told us a little bit more about where we were found, how we were found, where did we go. And this kind of, in general, is the main, I want to say, feeling of the adoption organizations industry is like, oh, look, you have a new baby. Go and enjoy that baby. Give it all its love, support it, bring it up to a great human being. But we don't look at, okay, what do we need to give this child right then and there? Support to learn and go through what they just went through.
Yeah.
And it comes later in life when you're older. And that's when you're like, oh, right, I did lose my mom. I did lose my country. I did lose a lot of things when I got adopted. And I feel like there's a common notion that adoptees have to be grateful.
Or lucky.
Yeah. Or the feeling of, oh, you're so lucky because you got adopted. Oh, you were chosen. Like, remember, you were chosen. I wasn't.
Like you were wanted.
Yeah, you were wanted. You were loved. And you are loved now. So people talk about the present with adoptees a lot and not about their past because, one, they feel like it's going to bring up really dark feelings, which it might, but it's not helpful when that adoptee shovels all that negativity down by themselves.
Especially if they're younger and they're experiencing that.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you will see this the most as an adoptive parent when your adopted child is going through adolescence and trying to just figure themselves out just like any other child would. But it's so much harder for them. And we could probably make another video about just adolescent phase.
Yeah.
And just how hard it was to get through that obstacle because you have so many questions. You don't know anything about them. You want to ask someone, but you don't know who to ask. Yeah. And I think that's why therapy is also a great resource.
Also put some resources in the description down below to help with any adoptees or even future adopted parents or parents going through this now for some more insight, but also just give some resources to help give your adoptee some support system. And then also some research for you guys to do, because I think it's really important to do research, especially when your child is suffering.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's why therapy is helpful, especially in the adolescent phase. But I agree. We didn't talk about grief in our own situation in our family. We didn't really talk about losing that part of our lives, maybe until adolescent phase. But even then, we really didn't touch on it because personally for me, I don't think I understood how traumatic it was.
Yeah.
So I never really brought it up with our parents about it. But now as an adult, I know how traumatizing it could be. So like how important it would be to talk about those feelings or just grief in general, because your child will experience those feelings at some point or another. There's no way getting around it. Just like there's no way getting around the abandonment issues or the stress, toxic stress, and how you deal with that is just, as an adoptee, it feels like it was put upon your lap and in your life, and you just kind of have to deal with it somehow.
Yeah, it's a major shit show.
Yeah.
And they just give it to the child.
And then said, here you go.
Yeah. And have a great life.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Not telling us it would be shitty for some of it.
Yeah. And it still is shitty sometimes.
Correct. We still have some very shitty feelings and emotions that we will always go through, no matter the age.
Yeah. Oh, goody. So fun. I just feel like a lot of people assume that these adoptees are grateful and happy. And yes, some are. Some are grateful. Some are happy. But there are some that are still struggling within themselves. And those are the adoptees that we need to look for, because it's really hard going at it alone. And in general, going it through anything dark and depressing and traumatic alone is sad. So if you are watching this and you are by yourself trying to deal with these emotions of being alone and you don't know how to go about it, make sure to look down in the the description section for some links that will help you maybe research more about adoption traumas in general. But that is where we are going to close today's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. I know a lot of people from last week wanted a video truly specifically on adoption trauma. So if you also have another topic you guys want us to talk about, just let us know down in the comments. Make sure to give a like, comment, and subscribe. And like always, keep listening, keep loving,
and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.